Cool. Hey guys. Hope you guys can hear me and see me. I'm so glad that you guys could join us. Welcome back to our card sessions. They look a little different today. We're all streaming from home. But glad that you guys could join us for another sit-in where we look at faith in action, real people with real faith, and we just have conversations to see what God's been doing in the lives of ordinary people and how you can be part of that too. So today I have with me two very good friends of mine, um, Jason and Chris. Jason's on with the headphones looking like a sick DJ. Jason is one of the leaders at Velocity, he has been for a while. He's studying accounting. He loves Jesus. He loves people. Phenomenal leader as well, if I do say so myself. And down below me is Chris De Castro. Also, awesome man. He used to be part of our church. Good friend of mine. He's a teacher at the moment and loves Jesus. Phenomenal leader, phenomenal friend. Guys, welcome. Guys, how you doing?
Nah, lekker sis, can't complain, but can't complain.
Awesome. DC, what's happening?
Yeah, good. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Thanks for joining us, guys. I really appreciate your time. Without further ado, let me pray for us quick, and then we'll get straight into the tough question. Hope you guys are ready.
Never.
Cool. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, thank you again for another moment that we just get to dive right into who you are as we try to learn more about you. Thank you that you make yourself available. I pray that you be part of this. Would you lead the conversation in any way you see fit? Lord, we just want to thank you and ask that you bless this time. Amen. Cool, guys. Also, just before we start, in the background, we have Uncle Daryl. He's our producer, if I can call him that. Awesome dude. He's been setting up all of this. Just a big shout out and thank you to him. There is the man himself, the brains behind this mission. We love you. Appreciate you, man. Yeah, let me get my lights going. Cool, let's jump right into it, man. Let me start with you, Chris. So, talk to us about your first few years outside of school, straight into like the real world. What was that like for you, and what was your faith like in that time?
Okay, well, I took a gap year pursuing a soccer career, as most youngsters, this idea of sports. So I took a gap year. I was kind of working, trying to earn some money as a bartender and a coach, things like that. But I got injured and that didn't go as planned. And so the following year I started to study sports science. And yeah, going into the real world, it was exciting for me because I enjoy meeting new people. So being placed in a varsity, you get to meet loads of people, and I really enjoyed that. But I was only there for six months until teaching came. And yeah, it's not like I had ambition for it. It's not like I wanted to, but I do believe it was, definitely led by the Lord in that way. But it was cool. I didn't. For me, it was quite exciting to leave school. Although I loved school, I really did. But it was exciting because there's so much adventure out there, and so meeting new people was part of that, and studying was a huge part of that. That was cool.
Oh, no, that's awesome, man. And for you, Jace, what is those first few years in the real world? What is that like for you? And where was your faith in that thing?
I mean, it's not exactly like I have entered the real world. I'm still a student, so I'm still very much just the next step of school. But I came out of school about at 19, and yeah, I was kind of indecisive on what I wanted to study. I didn't know if I wanted to go on a mission trip for a year or go into studying. So I spoke to my dad, and my dad said, "You will absolutely not have a gap year." So by all means, I went into studying, and I chose accounting. And funny enough, every time I tell people I study accounting, it's followed by the question, "Really? You don't look like an accountant." I'm like, then what does an accountant look like? But Accounting's been fun and full of tears. I mean, it's definitely difficult course, but God's grown me in enjoying it, despite sometimes failing. And yeah, so straight out of school, it looked like I was a new Christian. So I just kind of got saved in matric and was still finding my feet. And then joined Velocity, and I've been serving in that kind of space in the church ministry for last 6-7 years. Yeah, that's where I've been at, sis.
Oh, that's really cool. Chris, you mentioned something quite cool as you were explaining. You felt like God had been involved even throughout the first 2 years until you figuring out what you wanted to do. And Jase mentioned that he was keen to do a mission trip, actually, after that. And the cool thing is, like, you guys actually ended up going on mission together. And I feel like that's really cool that how God brought you two together like that. And the interesting, what I wanted to ask is that rather, what was it like for you guys leaving your home in the sense of not just your parents, but leaving what you knew, particularly for you, Chris? Maybe let's start with you. What was that like, taking that leap of faith, leaving what you knew into that traveling? Can you talk us through that? My question.
Okay, so I guess it will make sense. So I was studying sports science at UJ, and then I met the director of the school that I ended up working at, and he offered for me to go work there at the school. And so I went on the 6-week training camp for youth ministry, and that was 2010. So my gap year was 2009. And at that stage, my faith wasn't necessarily great, but being able to go on the 6-week course, it changed my life, because I really experienced love through kids. We hosted like an orphanage camp, and it changed my life. It was incredible. And then I had this desire to go either teach in a township or go on mission or something like that, because of that experience. It was incredible. And so fast forward until 2018, I stopped teaching, and I went into full-time ministry, and I was able to travel, which is what's got you to this question, because you know that much. And yeah, so leaving home again, I love culture. I love the idea of people. So it was very easy for me, because it was exciting to experience just God in other people and other ways of doing things. And so, yeah, for that sake, for that part, He orchestrated all of that. Because even the idea of teaching was not on my radar. It's not something that, oh my goodness, I really want to be a teacher. In fact, I don't even know how well, yeah, I mean, it's been really God sent. And it led me to the place of traveling, and I got to see amazing things. And yes, Jason and I went to Zimbabwe together in 2019. And it was an incredible experience, which I'm sure Jase would also like to share. But yeah, leaving home for me again was exciting, because I got to see the world. And I've never been one like, oh my word, I want to travel the world. I was quite indifferent, and then the Lord said, well, let's go on a trip, and we did. And so yeah, my life was changed from that 6-week course back in 2010 that led me to this idea of youth ministry, kids, and even it got to a place of prayer ministry. And yeah, I got to interact with many kinds of people, and I was very grateful for it.
Sure. I think maybe what the viewers maybe would be keen to know is, how did you know that was God leading you to maybe take that time off in that year to pursue that ministry? What was that like?
Again, at the time in 2010, I just somehow knew. I could say now that was the Lord, but then I just had the idea of, I'd love to do something like that. And somehow I knew it would be the year after I got my degree. So it took me long to get my degree. But when I finally did, I worked a year, and then I left to travel. And that was somehow always certain. I believe it was the Lord that gave me that impression. And yeah, I think I grew in recognizing what his voice sounded like. It was a lot a lot more gentle, a lot more kind, a lot more loving, a lot more full of truth. And I guess learning to be still in his presence, you start to distinguish a little bit more. And yeah, I came across material that helped specifically with that, that changed a lot. But essentially, give him the space and time to speak about that. And also the people around me and the things that came available. Another huge thing about how I knew it was him, there was just huge peace. There was no doubt in my mind. It didn't matter if there was other options. It didn't matter if people were doubting or like some of my family were quite concerned in terms of safety. It didn't alter anything. That was huge confirmation for me, and specifically the peace that helped me know that was the Lord in that way. In terms of seeking to hear His voice, peace was a big one. And again, this knowing, which comes from being still, I think.
For you, Jace, what led up to that year of just taking that time off with Chris? What led up to that?
Yeah, it was quite a. So I was finishing off my undergrad. So in uni, you do your first 3 years, and then you then need to go to do a postgrad. So I got my bachelor's, but in 2018, at the end of the year, I was finishing off my course, and my father passed away quite suddenly, and I ended up failing a unit, and then I had to repeat it for a semester, so 6 months the following yeah, and which is like, if you guys had to understand it, like from a school perspective, it's like now you're going to school, but for one subject. So in terms of a full 8-hour day, you're only going in for maybe an hour or two. So I had a lot of like open time. So I kind of started taking up some tutoring and that sort of thing from friends. But then I was also kind of flat from just the grief from my dad. So the semester came to an end. And Chris was kind of in the space of traveling and then back at home. And I eventually just went to him. I said, dude, are we going to go on a mission trip together or not? And I said, you got to make it happen, basically. Like, there wasn't much to it. And I think Chris wasn't so settled, or he didn't feel that I was so sure on going. And I eventually said to him, did I stutter, my dude? And and then eventually he started planning things. And it was quite funny. I think Chris can speak on it a bit later, but like the planning for the trip, it almost felt like horrendous. We didn't have a game plan, and we didn't know the dudes we were gonna go and meet. We really didn't know much, and I was just taking off Chris's kind of persona, and I was like, well, he's done this before, and I'll just follow suit. So what led me to leaving home and ultimately joining Chris was just, yeah, God had set it up. I mean, it's a tragedy. He kind of presented me with a bit of rest and a bit of a getaway, because my year would only start the following year in 2019 or 2020. And yeah, so November of that year came. I wasn't doing anything for that month. And yeah, I hopped on board with Chris's plans. So yeah, I don't know if you want to ask Chris about the plans.
Chris, took me through those plans. What is it like planning with Jase?
It wasn't necessarily on Jason's part. It's more about the connections, because the person that I was in contact with took a long time to get back to me. So we were hoping for September, and then it didn't happen. And then, so in that way, when we were trying in our best way to be prepared for anything, we just weren't getting much back. But then when we got there, which is what Jason was alluding to, it was so organized, probably, at least in my experience, the most organized trip I've been on. For 2 weeks, there was just plans with who we were going to meet up with, like three prayer appointments a day, weekends all sorted. Everything was just planned out so well. But based on getting there, it was like Jay says, we just had no idea. And I was thankful that Jace was okay with it, because I think it could have stressed out a lot of people, but we went in faith for a lot of it.
Cool. And you see, there's some questions that we'll get to now from some of the viewers. What I wanted to ask Chris specifically was just when people ask, okay, how do you know when it's God and how do you know when it's not? And often the answer is you just know that you know. So, what are some practical tools? I know one of them you spoke about being still. So, what are some four keys, practical tools that we can maybe self practice in terms of hearing God's voice?
Yeah, it's quite funny because Jase would always have comments, but yeah, the material I came across specifically on hearing God's voice, it does speak on four keys, and again, it's technique, tools, whatever term you want to use, but it's to position ourselves to recognize that God speaks. Because if He says, "My sheep hear my voice," then He's speaking. And what we're growing in is recognizing when it's His voice and when it's ours or the enemy or whoever it is or the world. And so part of that is being still, is recognizing that I get to fix my eyes on Him. So I want to be intentional with what I'm listening for, because if I'm not intentional, anything, anything can take that space, and then there's many voices. And so if I'm intentional by fixing my eyes on Jesus, I'm giving Him space, and even being prayerful in that space. Like as I'm coming to be still before you, I'm seeking the Lord. And another thing that I've come to recognize is that His voice is spontaneous. It's often unexpected. If you think about automatic activity like maybe brushing your teeth, you're not thinking about these things, and often there's thoughts that come to you. I would say that that's a space for you to be aware of it, possibly these great ideas from the Lord. And then a huge thing that helps you process all of these thoughts, these spontaneous thoughts, is writing them down. And so when you write them down, you can test them later, you can weigh them up to Scripture. And that's been very helpful for me, as well as having people come alongside you. I think the Lord has designed us for community, which has been very difficult now in COVID for sure, and probably many mental health issues as a result of all these struggles, depression, anxiety, because we're so designed for fellowship and community. And so when I'm processing what the Lord's saying, I want to include other people so that they are in a position of, hey, that sounds like the Lord, or that is so in line with Scripture, that's so His heart, or actually let's maybe hold up, let's maybe not. So involving other people is huge too.
Sure. So you spoke about being still, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the idea of that spontaneous thought, and then journaling. So those are the four, and then also it's important to be in community so they can bounce. You can bounce off things from them to test whether is this God, is this not. Does that sum it up well?
Yeah, I would say that.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Let's jump into some questions from our viewers. Lisa is asking, what is a perception you had of life that has changed since you've been out of school? Let's throw that one to Jase. So what has been a perception of life that has changed since you've been out of school?
I think the main one is, I think everyone thinks when you leave school it's an easy transition, it's an easy stepping out into what you want to do, and I think both me and Chris we honestly took longer routes with our studies, and just when life comes at you, I think you have a different step, and you have to maybe sometimes take a step back to what you're doing. So the perception of that you have to know everything all the time, I think that's a big no-no. And I think for most people that have stepped out of school, they'll say that's the number one thing that they realize is that you don't have it all together, and you're still waiting on to figure it out. And and I think for me that's what it's like walking with the Father, because you don't get all the answers at the start. You get them as you progress, and we as humans don't really like that, but I think it's the best way to operate. It's the only way to learn what peace is, that you don't know everything, but that's okay. So that'd be for me.
Yeah, I think that's such a good answer. The idea that we we need to have peace with the fact that we don't know everything. And I think with culture, there's such a pressure to seem like you have it all figured out.
Mhm.
It can be detrimental even to one's mental health, because reality is we don't always have it figured out. But yeah, sure. Thanks for that truth there, Jase. And Chris, for you, what is a perception that changed?
The one thing about me is that I'm not far. I'm very present. I'm like, I don't think about, even with my
Yeah,
future, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. Just because I could kick a ball, that's what I wanted to do. Just because I
yeah,
could. I don't have plans. So in terms of the perception of what life should be, it was never something I thought about. But what I have recognized is you continue to discover who you are, especially early 20s, coming out of school. There's so much of who you are that's because of all these new environments, you are positioned to adapt, and all of a sudden you recognize that you're capable of different things, other things that you never thought of before. And I know for me specifically, yeah, for me it was because I gave my life to Jesus. It changed everything. But as a result, um, I was just a lot more aware of how He's designed me and who He's designed me to be, and that changed. And yeah, and then that grows far beyond anything you could ever imagine as you step into it, as you embrace change, because change is constant. So that's an exciting thing about what lies ahead. Yes,
yeah,
you don't know, but the potential for what it could be is
yeah,
huge, and specifically for me, found in Christ, it's amazing in that way. So yeah, I can't say my perception. I had very little idea of because I had no expectations really. But what I did recognize is God would bring things to light that I needed to deal with or step into or grow or develop or get rid of that brought about these changes. And then
yeah,
now leaves me in a perception of uh, the way I should be living, for example. So yeah.
yeah. Sure. I like what you said there. So for you, Chris, it sounded more like it's not what changed your perception, more like who changed your perception. Because I think you had one way of perceiving life, meeting Jesus. Now you have a new way of perceiving and understanding life. But yeah, so I think that's really cool. It's very important that we. Um, I think the who of our perception like is very important, and where it all starts. I think. So yeah, let's jump into the next question from Jody Dyers. Haven't heard that name before, but it's a lekker one. She's asking, what do you wish you knew or learned that would have helped you once you left school? Let's start with Chris. Seeing as though you're on a roll here.
Oh wow. I I don't know actually.
Yeah,
Um, what I do know is the decision to follow Christ was the most important thing, changed everything. And so knowing him as a person influenced that. So if I wanted to know something, it would be like know him. I don't think it's like because all of it just it led me to now, and I don't have a specific um, thing like oh this would have because I know it's just all in him. So yeah, maybe if I knew some of these things earlier, it would have changed a lot. And I know when I was 19, I made many mistakes. Christ was not in my life. But honestly, um, there's no regrets. There's no like, I wish I knew this earlier. Um, I'm just grateful. I don't know if I have an answer to that question. Sorry.
no, no, no. Sounds good. Sounds good. And Jace, for you, what do you wish you would have learned when you?
I mean, like, there's a couple things that you look in hindsight, you're like, oh, if only I knew this at the start, I would have thought a bit different, acted a bit different, and
Yeah,
done things a bit different. And I don't think we will ever be granted that. But for me, like, the idea that it's okay to fail. Like you don't have to be good
Sure.
at everything. You don't have to know everything that's potting from the start. Was a big one for me. Because in my friend group, there's a lot of guys that excel at like academics, and then they're really hard to be around because they like if they get something, they get it instantly, and then there's perception that on you is like not okay. You shouldn't be like that. You should be better like them, and it's not a truth. It's a big facade or fake thing that we think like that. So yeah, for me that would be the main one is that it's okay to fail and there's grace in it. And then secondly, I think realizing how important friends in the faith are, people that are like-minded and similar to you. And I have two friends that I can think of coming out of school. And the one being Trist, which a lot of us will know. Like, I can't tell you how thankful I am that I had a friend that kind of he got saved same time as me, and we progressed together. That
Sure.
the importance of that, the importance of just having someone really solid that thinks like you. Does it make sense, Sis?
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely makes sense. And again, highlighting the importance of community. I think in today's culture, like, yes, a lot of people just want to do this thing on their own. So again, I think Chris also spoke about it, like how do we hear God's voice? It's important to try and learn those things in the context of people who already know and love Christ, so you can bounce off things from them. Because in isolation, a whole bunch of weird things can come out that are not necessarily godly, but community helps us keep in check. And the idea that it's okay to fail. I think it's difficult in today's age to feel that way, because like Chris mentioned, like there's this perception that we need to have it all figured out. I think you mentioned it even earlier that we need to have this all figured out, and things like Instagram and social media give that impression that everybody else has it figured out. Like you mentioned with your friends, like they seem to get it so quickly, and then you looked at your own life, you're like, I'm not getting it as quick. So I think
Cool.
Instagram's like they're like, yo, he already has this car, he already has that. He's already that in that stage of his life,
Hmm?
and nothing's changed with me since I've left high school, type of thing. And but it's okay to fail, because you're only failing if you're trying. So if you're not trying, you're not failing. So keep trying because it's okay to fail. Um, so yeah, I like that you pointed that out. I think we have time for, let's throw in one more question. We'll try to be quick with this one, then we'll wrap up. Um, so from Talisa again, was there a time when you doubted or struggled to trust God with your life plan? And if so, what encouraged you to keep pursuing and trusting God? Chris, take it away.
I think up until recently, I didn't necessarily doubt or struggle to trust God. Um, I was okay with having, again, without having a plan, without having so much ambition. I was just like, whatever he wants to do. It's just, again, that's personality. It's, certain people are like that. Certain people need to know everything. I was very much okay with not knowing anything. Um, I was always blown away how it ended up. But in recent spaces, I've left the ministry. Well, not necessarily ministry's life, right? But stopped full time missionary and moved into teaching. And sometimes at least initially, I think I'm processing that space. But initially, I thought, oh my goodness, does that mean moving back? So in that way, I was kind of going, sure, is this, especially before I decided, I was going, oh, I don't even want to go back to teaching. I don't think this is. But then there was again such huge peace, and I just trusted, and now I know that it's right for now, and now I know that even if he were to keep me as a teacher until I'm old, I want to be in a position where I follow him regardless, because it's, and what he continues to say is that it's him that brings the life. It's not the ministry.
Yeah.
He is life, right? And so it didn't matter if I was on the traveling, or if I'm in the classroom, or even if I'm doing nothing.
Yeah.
The point was that I was with him. And so that's what I'm growing in. And yeah, I think outside of living in that, there was a little bit of doubt. And the encouragement is that I hold on to the promise that as I draw near, he draws near. I mean, he stands at the door and he knocks. And then I open it up, right? And as I abide, he abides. And so there's a step that I'm taking. If I seek him and I seek him with all my heart, I will find him. And so those steps, I can hold on to the promises, even in the doubt, even in the concern of what it's going to look like. I can just keep coming back to, as I draw near to I'll find you. And as a result, in these spaces, he simply says, I own everything. Everything belongs to me. It didn't. Your concern is still very small. You stay with me, I'll show you that I gave the life to that when you traveled. So again, it's that pursuit of him in the mist. It's the it's he is the one that brings comfort. And so if I'm not fixing my eyes on him, positioning myself to focus or direct my feeling, because I'm feeling something, I'm feeling concerned. And he's saying you can direct it to me, you can give it to me. However, however you do that, and there's many ways that in that concern, in the frustration, he can meet you. And that's what's exciting about it, because he's the one that brings life every time. And yes, it's a struggle at times, but he's worth it.
And for you, Jase, was there a time when you doubted, and what encouraged you or kept you going?
I mean, that's a very good question. And it'd be quite interesting if we had like an interview like 2 years ago with me and Chris. There were so many conversations where it was like going back and forth on what I believe about the Christian faith, why I believe it, and I always find that I'm an individual that I get trapped in my mind in terms of like if I can't articulate what I'm thinking, I struggle to believe it, and so especially when it came on relying on God and trusting Him, and it takes you a little bit on dips and twirls, because such is life. It's not a straight road necessarily, and so my answer would be that constantly I would doubt God. Like even now, I'd say constantly there's times that I would doubt God, and it's Him that would give me reassurance for faith. Like I think that's the whole point of getting to know Him as a relationship. Like think of when you met let's say whoever your best friend is now. Like I have a couple in mind, and when I first met them, I was like, yo, I don't really know you. I don't know how you function, what you like, what you dislike. A year later, I know a bit more about you. I really know what you dislike. I really know what you do like. And
Yeah,
time goes on again, and then you find out more and more about that person. And the same question can be asked: did I doubt our friendship? Possibly, but I was also more
sure.
learning about him. And I think it's more real that analogy with our Father, because we come to this place of knowing Him, but then we're still figuring out who He is for us, what we can do for Him, what He does for us. And again, when it's not a straight line, doubt comes in. And that's just learning who He is. And I think doubt and faith coexist and they relate quite well, because when you doubt and then you overcome that, the idea that you have more faith or more trust in the Father now because you walked through this. So yeah, that's exactly it, like how I would phrase it. It's like I would never want it to be comfortable, because I think it would lead to me not trusting, not seeking, not wanting to be with Him. If it was easy, I don't think it would be necessarily worth pursuing. And I love what Chris said, like when you seek me with all your heart, then you'll find me. And when you're 19, you can only give so much because that's all you know. And then maybe when you're
Yeah,
27, you can give a bit more. And maybe when your dad's at 40, you can give a whole lot more. So
yeah,
yeah, that would be how I would look at that.
sure. That's incredible. I love that. It's almost like if you if you're not uncomfortable and if it's easy, you should question whether it's worth it or not. And I like that because difficulty, I think, gives value. And yeah, apparently Daryl is 39, not 40. So, but yeah, guys, I think we're gonna have to cap it there. And I have so many questions that I'd love to go into. It always feels like there should be a part two to all these interviews. But definitely, it's been fun. It's been real. It's been fun, but it's also been real fun. So yeah, just to wrap it up, I think, or at least what I've noticed, is the importance of, again, community that we're always talking about and always stressing, because community helps incubate and grow our faith. And yeah, because I don't think we can do this alone. And so community, I think, is a huge thing. Faith in our walk with Christ, because often I think we even doubt ourselves and we lack confidence in our walk with Christ. So faith in that, and pursuing the Father. And what that means is the best you know how, giving your all to Him. And whatever that looks like, because for you, Chris and Jase, it looked like going to Zimbabwe. That's what pursuing the Father led you to. So guys, I don't know, do you have any closing thoughts there, Jase?
I think it's been a great session, dude. And Sis, thanks for hosting as usual, my bro.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming through. Appreciate it. Chris?
Yeah, thanks again. It's good to see you guys. And yeah, youth, I hope you continue to find Him, or that you would see Him. Those who have eyes, let them see. Those who have ears, praying for those eyes and ears to see and hear Him. Because, again, like, if He's real, that was my question. If you're real, I'll give you everything. And He made Himself real. So in that pursuit of Him, which again is the pursuing Him with everything, I pray that you'll continue to find Him, because you will, and it will change many internal things, for sure. External, that's optional, but internal, like, everything. But thanks again. I really appreciate that you would include me.
Sure. Awesome, guys. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. And for those watching, like I said, it's normal people leading extraordinary lives because of faith and what they've, the way they've just trusted God. And yeah, what we get to see here in our Velocity lives and our card sessions is just faith in practice. Real people with real faith and what that looks like. And I know that there's been some questions that maybe have stirred up in you guys that have come up. Love for you to keep asking and keep running after Jesus, even if you're not sure, even if you're uncertain, even if you're scared. I'd like to encourage you to keep running after Jesus. Seek Him and you'll find Him, and that's guaranteed. So yeah, again, Chris and Jess, thanks for just logging on and sharing your hearts with us. And to you guys watching, man, we love you. We appreciate you. We really hope that this was helpful somehow. And man, just join in again next week. There's a lot more conversations, good conversations. Cool, guys. Have an awesome weekend. Cheers.